Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus are all names you've likely heard before. They're all pillars of ancient wisdom. There's a lot we can learn from these Stoic philosophers. You may have read one of the books by Ryan Holiday. Now, these guys have all shaped timeless leadership principles that have transcended centuries and centuries and centuries. So there must be something in there, right? How to lead under pressure, perhaps. How to lead with humility, for sure. How to tame your ego. That's a big one. Now, their teachings guide us to develop the essential qualities that every leader can benefit from even today. I'm Antonio, and today I'm going to be your leadership coach. So let's me and you spend the next, 25-30 minutes together and discover how ancient wisdom can transform your approach to modern leadership. And this way, you can finally begin to stop managing and start leading. So, here are 10 Stoic leadership lessons, but for the modern world. Number 1, the Stoic CEO. Marcus Aurelius on leadership under pressure. Now, the lesson I think for us here is control what you can and let go what you can't. Control the controllables, perhaps. He said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. And you know what? He's right. The translation is, stop losing sleep over things you can't control. Imagine, if you will, just for a second, that there is a skier, a downhill skier, an Olympic skier, the great slaloms, right? On top of a mountain, covered in snow. It's the Olympics and it's the final. And they're stood in, that kind of like hut thing, right, with the bleeper going, and they're getting ready to go, and across their legs they've got that timing bar thing. I wish I knew more about this before I started. But anyway, the time clicks down, you hear the beep, 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 and off she does. She hurls herself down the side of the mountain. Well, take a second to think about all of the things that skier cannot control. She can't control the weather. She can't control the condition of the snow. She can't control the order in which all of the contestants ski. She can't control who she's skiing against. She can't control how well they ski. She can't control the design of the course, nor the steepness of the hill, nor the visibility, nor what the crowd does, nor what the temperature is. No, there's a million things that she can't control. And if you think about all of the things that she can't control, you kind of think, why would she bother? Well, because there are some things that she can control. Take a second to think about what those might be. What things can she control? Well, she can control her mindset. She can control her breathing. She can control her attitude. She can control her preparation, her training, her diet, her equipment. She can control her nutrition. There's so many things that she can control. There are things that she can control, and there are things that she can't control. Which of those things should she be focused on? Which of those things should she not be focused on? All right, well, let's take that principle, apply Marcus Aurelius thinking, and apply it to your world. The modern application, I guess, is great leaders, like the downhill skiers, don't waste time on external chaos. They don't waste time on worrying about the economic downturns, on market shifts, on AI, on Karen from accounting. Instead, they focus on what they can influence, what they can control, like maybe company culture, maybe strategy, vision, mission, goals, core values, and most importantly of all, I think, their own reactions to situations. The modern model, I guess, could be Locus of Control by Julian Rotter. And he says that resilient leaders focus on internal control rather than external factors. So I guess think about all of the things that are important. Think about all of the things that you can control. And then where those two circles overlap on the kind of Venn diagram of leadership, right? Things that are important, things that you can control, and just concentrate like a lunatic on that slice in the middle. Things that are important and things that you can control. Okay. lesson 1. Lesson 2. You've probably heard this lots of times. The obstacle is the way. Well, what does that mean? Well, Marcus, again, said that the impediment to action advances action, and what stands in the way becomes the way. And so I guess what that means is the big challenge you're facing is not a roadblock, but it's actually the training ground. So that takes a bit of unpicking. The modern application, I suppose, is effective leaders use adversity as fuel. Think for a second about maybe Steve Jobs. He got fired from Apple, remember, but then he came back later, stronger and with more clarity. Think about this too. There are the right kinds of wrongs, and then there are the wrong kinds of wrongs. Now, the right kinds of wrongs are which? Well, they're the wrongs that we learn from. The right kinds of wrongs are the wrongs that we learn from. In other words, we try something, it doesn't work, we learn from it, we move on, and we're stronger as a consequence for the failures. I think I've mentioned in previous episodes that my dad used to say to us every Sunday when we went around for dinner, "Where have you guys failed this week?" And if we reported that we hadn't failed anywhere this week, he would say, well, now that's a week wasted, because if you haven't failed, you haven't learned anything. If you haven't learned anything, then you're not further down the beach. I used to have a boss that said to me, "Hey, Antonio, what did you learn yesterday?" And if ever I said, well, I didn't learn anything, Andy, he would say, well, that's a day missed too. Because the only advantage you have today over yesterday is what you've learned. Otherwise, he said, his words, not mine, a little bit grisly, but there you are, that the only advantage we have today over yesterday, otherwise, is what you've learned, otherwise, we're just a day closer to dead. So the modern model of that, I think, is probably growth mindset versus fixed mindset. You ought to, as a leader, work very hard on growing your mindset, on developing a growth mindset for you and for those around you. You could do a lot worse than read Carol Dweck's book on growth mindset, which is great leaders don't fear failure, they see it as necessary for success. What I'm saying is, failure is okay if you learn from it. If you don't learn from it, then it's the wrong kind of wrong. So, there's another book you might want to think about, which is The Right Kind of Wrong. Okay, that's enough for Marcus, I think, for now. So let's talk about Seneca. Now, Seneca had stuff to say about time management. Now, we're going to have a big fallout about time management in a minute, so hold on to your britches. But basically, leaders who stop wasting time win. Okay, so the lesson for us is we suffer more in imagination than reality, is what Seneca said. His actual words were, we are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. The translation is, you're spending more time stressing about work than actually doing it. Now, the modern application, I guess, is leaders often get caught in analysis paralysis with endless planning. I've been in those meetings myself. I've been the cause of those meetings myself. I can only apologize, right? Second guessing, and meanwhile the clock is ticking. And action beats overthinking every time. What we say in our organization is, look, just make an imperfect start. To paraphrase Ernest Hemingway, to begin. Just make a start and course correct along the way. And that's action beats overthinking. Action bias is the most important resource for any leader. The modern model and application for that might be the Eisenhower matrix, I suppose. Separate what's urgent from what's important and stop wasting time on nonsense, I guess. So check out an earlier episode where we do a deep dive into that. Now, let's talk about why I said we're going to fall out. Well, how many times have people told you, or maybe even asked you for, hey boss, can I go on a time management course, please? I'm just trying to organize my life, trying to get my things stuff, and I want to do a time management course. And you may have said, yes, sure, go ahead. Sorry to say, you probably wasted your money. Why? Because there's no such thing as time management. It doesn't exist. What do I mean by that? Well, you can only manage what you can control. Can you control time? I don't think you can. I think you've got as many seconds in the day as I have, and I think I've got as many seconds in the day as everybody else has. That includes Alexander the Great, Gandhi, JFK, Lincoln, right? We all have the same amount of seconds in the day. You can only manage what you can control. Can you control time? No. If you can't control time, You can't manage time. So think about it this way. That from now on, don't think about time management, think about behavior management. It's what you do in the seconds that you have. So, again, as we've said, don't waste time. Use time wisely. What that means is use your behaviors wisely. Okay, so that segues nicely into lesson 4, which is stop acting like you have unlimited time, because you don't. What did Seneca say? He said it's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. Amen. I'm sure you feel that you fit that too. It's interesting. I was talking to somebody that works for us a couple of months ago, and I asked her whether she had time to finish the project that we were talking about, and she confessed that she hadn't had the time to finish the project on time. But then half an hour later proceeded to tell me how she'd binge watched 15 episodes of Netflix over the weekend. I rest my case, right? These things, lovely though they are, can be thieves of time if we're not careful. Okay, translation. Your calendar doesn't owe you anything. It really doesn't. So the modern application of that is, how many meetings about meetings do you have? How many emails at midnight? If you don't control your time, you can't control your time, we talked about that. So if you don't control your behaviors, somebody else will. The best leaders ruthlessly prioritize. If you have more than 5 priorities, you have none. And remember too, that every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Be careful what you're saying yes to. And every time you're saying no to something, you're saying yes, or you have the ability or the opportunity perhaps to say yes to something else. Be very careful about what you're saying yes and no to, because we can't manage time, only our behaviors. And remember too, that behavior is a language, and people can hear what you're doing. Think about that. Remember, no such thing as time management. Now, what's the modern model for all of that? I guess it's time blocking more than anything else, right? Cal Newport, schedule your actual priorities first and then fit everything else around them. Here's another thought, just before we move on, that if there isn't a slot in your calendar for the next step, then it doesn't exist. So if there isn't a slot in your calendar for the next step, like I might do this, I could do that, and they end up in the leadership trinity of regret. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? Don't fall prey to that. Put the stuff in your calendar that's important. Time block the important stuff like coaching, developing your people. Time block them in. Otherwise, the world will come in and snaffle all of your time. Whilst you sit back with your feet up, maybe grab yourself a cup of coffee and something nice, I want to talk to you about a few things before we continue on with our Stoics. First, for those of you that are new to the podcast, welcome one, welcome all. You're very welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Antonio Garrido. I'm the founder and president of My Daily Leadership. So, a bit about me if you're new. Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur and a business leader, like you, I suppose. I've authored 3 books. More on that soon, because there's another one on the way. And I've had the privilege of leading businesses from ground level startups to Fortune 60 companies with billions in revenue and thousands of employees. Lucky me. But when we sat down and designed this podcast, we knew we wanted to give leaders just like you real value and return on investment for your time. Just been talking about that. So we know you're super duper busy, so we've made sure that you leave every episode with practical insight, practical thoughts, practical models that you can apply to your everyday leadership challenges right away today. So if you think we're doing that and you think we're doing it well, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel on YouTube, or follow us on your preferred podcast platforms, of course. And any support you can give will allow us to reach and help many more leaders just like you. So if you are watching on YouTube, why not tell us your current biggest leadership challenge in the comments? And I'm serious, because we'll either point you towards the relevant episode, or if we don't have one yet, we will make one just for you. So please do that. We really will read and respond to each comment. Final thing before we get back to the Stoics, I want to mention our book, which is My Daily Leadership, a powerful roadmap for leadership success. Hold tight. This is the chap, the very chap. You even get a free photo of me so you can throw darts at it. Now, there may not be much ancient wisdom in here, but there's no short supply of modern wisdom, I hope. Just won an award. But anyway, you'll find leadership lessons from Walmart. They know what they're doing. Apple, they're not so bad. Betty Crocker, what? Yes, I said it, Betty Crocker. Lobsters even. We all need to be more lobster-like. Goldilocks and much, much more. So please, I'm hoping you're intrigued. You should be. So grab a copy online at Amazon or wherever you buy your best books and audiobooks. If you want to get the audiobook, it's me. So maybe that'll put you off. Okay, back to today's lesson. Lesson 5, let's talk about Epictetus and servant leadership perhaps, and the strength that we have in humility. What's the lesson of this? The lesson is it's not what happens, it's how you react to what happens. Epictetus said, men are disturbed not by things, but by the view they take of them. That is deep as whale doo-doo. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. Translation, if you lose your cool every time something goes wrong, you're the problem. The modern application is leaders who blame external factors. The market is bad, the team is unmotivated, elections, AI, right? Leaders who blame external factors, right? Those who externalize their problems, they kind of never improve. Resilient leaders control their responses to situations. They internalize their issues. The modern model for this, I guess, more than anything else, is EQ. Emotional intelligence, which you should know by now is significantly more important than IQ and technical skill and experience. So if you're going to develop something, please, please, please work hard on developing your EQ. That helps you to reframe problems, impulse control, self-awareness, and so on. And it changes how you deal with those problems. Let's move on. Lesson 6. Know what you don't know. Now that's a bit Donald Rumsfeld. If you don't know who he is, congratulations, you might want to look him up. There are known knowns, there are unknown knowns. You'll get the idea when you look it up. But basically, Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Not something that leaders do easily. The translation is, the best leaders say the 3 most important words a lot. And the 3 most important words are, no, it's not I love you, but thanks very much. It's I don't know. And the best leaders say I don't know more often than you think. In fact, the very best leaders say I don't know when sometimes they think that they do know. Think about that for a moment or two. Modern application is servant leaders. And servant leaders listen, learn, and ask questions instead of pretending that they have all of the answers. Arrogance, let me tell you, is very expensive. My brother, who runs another business, he says, hey, look, in leadership, you can either feed your ego or your children. You decide. And I think that's really good. The modern model, I guess, is Greensleeve's servant leadership model, and the best leaders serve first and lead second. Okay, let's move on to another one. The Stoics' Guide to Crisis Management. This is lesson 7, I think we're up to, which is expect problems before they happen. This is going to sound a little bit Harry Potter. You'll know it when you hear it and you'll know why, but basically in Latin, it's premeditatio malorum. Bit Harry Potter. But what is quite unlooked for is more crushing in its effect, and unexpectedness adds to the weight of a disaster. Listen, that was probably hard 2,000 years ago, Seneca, and it's hard today, but what does that translate as? It translates as, if you're surprised by a crisis, you probably weren't paying attention. Now, okay, there are some things, that no one expected. COVID-19, for the sake of argument. But there are things that are probably on your horizon right now, and some of you aren't paying attention to it properly. I just had a piece published by Forbes talking about AI, right? We all know about AI, right? But what are you doing about AI? Is AI yet a line item on your budget? Are you yet employing somebody to manage the whole AI process and systems and the AI world for your business? Are you yet investing properly in AI? Look, AI won't take off, won't won't replace you, but actually somebody that does your job that uses AI probably will replace you. So think about that. But look, the modern application, I guess, is that the best leaders prepare for the worst, not in a paranoid way, but in a we have a backup plan, kind of plan B kind of way, right? If the worst happens, this is what we're going to do. The Air Force use that a lot, right? The modern model is VUCA, I suppose. They are trained. What do people in the Navy aviators to go to Top Gun, not the movie, but the real place, right, where they really go and learn. They take the best of the best of the best pilots in the world and they send them to Top Gun. What do they send them to learn? Not how to fly a plane. They know how to fly a plane. That's how they get to Top Gun, right? So they're not teaching them that. What they are teaching them is how to deal with VUCA. What's a VUCA world? It's volatile, it's uncertain, it's complex, and it's ambiguous. That's what they're teaching them in Top Gun. That's what you as leaders need to deal with. Volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. We don't like any of those things, do we, leaders? No, but we have to deal with them. We have to figure out how to deal with them because we have to lead effectively in unpredictable situations. Situations that are volatile, that means very changeable. Uncertain, that means we don't know what's next. Complex, that means we push a button and a light comes on, we push the same button and a different light comes on, we push the same button and a toilet flushes, right? We've got to figure that out. And ambiguity, and nobody likes ambiguity. Okay, good. Lesson 8, keep your emotions in check. I've already talked about EQ, but Epictetus said if a person gave your body to a stranger, think about that for a second, if a person gave your body to a stranger, you'd be furious, yet you hand over your mind to anyone who insults you. Mic drop, right? The translation is stop reacting emotionally to everything and everyone and things that people say. Modern application, I guess, is crisis leaders stay calm when others panic. If you lose your cool, so will the team. How many times have we been on a flight that's hit terrible turbulence and we all look to the pilot and we look to the crew, and so long as they're staying cool, we can stay cool too, right? As soon as we start to panic, everyone starts to panic. If you have dogs, I have dogs, I have 2, they're phenomenal. Somebody comes to the house unexpectedly and knocks on the door. The dogs look to me. Your children do the same too, to decide whether or not this is something we need to get upset about and panic about, right? Your team do that too. If you lose your mind, your team, the dogs and your kids and the pilot, or the passengers rather, will lose their mind too. So, what are we talking about? Oh, it's another article I wrote for Forbes talking about your lizard brain. Why is your lizard brain holding you back? The modern model, I guess, is amygdala hijack. Daniel Goleman, EQ, you gotta love him. Emotional intelligence is the difference between reacting and responding. What would you rather hear? The patient is reacting to the medicine or the patient is responding to the medicine? I'd rather hear the second one rather than the first one, and people want to see their leaders responding, not reacting. And that means you. All right, number 5, ego is the enemy, how Stoics tamed their own pride. Lesson 9 then is check your ego at the door. It's impossible, Epictetus says, it's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. I'll say that again. It's impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. In my daily leadership, we say, look, here's the problem. Rule 1, they never believe what you tell them. Rule 2, they rarely believe what you show them. Rule 3, they may believe what somebody else tells them. But rule 4, they always believe what they tell themselves. So your job as a leader is to help them tell themselves, by process of coaching and guided discovery, what it is or how they ought to be thinking about the situation. Translation is, the moment you think you've got it all figured out, you stop growing. It's the wrong kind of wrong. If you think you're the smartest person in the room, I'm sorry, you're in the wrong room. We did an episode earlier about these Russian dolls, which you can see behind me. Go check that one out if you want to know a little bit more about not being the smartest person in the room. My job is to make sure that I'm the dumbest person in the room. How do I do that? By hiring the smartest people I can find. That's your job too. The modern application, I guess, is leaders who prioritize their own brilliance over learning get left behind. Every CEO who ignored disruptive technology, they're in trouble. Years ago, too many years that I would care to imagine, I was in an organization and the board were bemoaning the fact of the rise of the internet. That's how ancient I am. Almost as ancient as the Stoics, perhaps. And we were all complaining about what we're going to do about the internet. And halfway through, I said, okay, time out, everybody, time out. Hands up here, I asked the board. Hands up. Who thinks the internet is going away? And of course, nobody put their hands up, but of course it never did. And the same will be of AI and cloud and lots of other things coming that we can't even imagine yet. The modern model, I guess, is Jim Collins. You can't do much better than Jim Collins' level 5 leadership. The best leaders combine humility with fierce resolve. Good. Lesson 10, I think we're there. Praise in public, take the blame in private. You guys know that. What did Seneca say? He said, a wise man is content with his lot, whatever it may be, without wishing for what he has not. Someone else said, and I think it's attributed to Ronald Reagan, but it might be Lou Holtz. It may have been Lou Holtz, may have been Ronald Reagan. Anyway, it's amazing what can be accomplished when you don't care who gets credit, leaders. Think about that. Translation is, leaders who hoard credit and deflect blame aren't leaders. What are they? They're politicians. Nobody wants to work for a politician, especially the modern ones, right? Holy moly. Okay, in modern application is the best leaders celebrate their team's successes publicly and absorb failures privately. You know that too. Modern model, I guess, would be Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink. Can't do much worse than that. Much better, I'm sorry. Leaders own everything in their world. No excuses. My coach he's a retired nuclear submarine captain. We talk about him in the book. It's your submarine. Anything that happens on your submarine is your responsibility. The good and especially the bad. Final thoughts, I suppose, is why Stoicism is the ultimate leadership superpower. Look, the Stoics, thousands of years ago, they understood leadership centuries before business schools were even a thing, before we knew what we did. But their principles are control what you can and make sure you do. Expect setbacks and make sure you do. Keep your ego in check and make sure you do. And they're exactly what modern leaders need. In the army, they say, I think it's either the army or the navy. I think it's the army. Someone will correct me, no doubt. Whenever you walk into a room, leave your stripes by the door. When you pair Stoic philosophy with modern leadership models, and we have a million of them, check out our other videos, you get a framework that's timeless and practical. So, the next time you're about to rage email someone or spiral into overthinking, that'll kill you. Ask yourself, what would Marcus or Seneca or Epictetus do? Maybe what would Antonio do? Here's me talking about leaving my ego at the door. Okay, here's what they would do. They would take a deep breath, they would reframe the problem, and they would lead without all of the drama. Final point, we have a new book coming out soon. It's about 34 leadership laws. So I suppose get it, or pre-order it perhaps whenever you're watching this or listening to this. Get it from where all of your great books come from. Well, that's it for today's episode. It was fast and furious. I hope you thought it was useful. It was stories today and no models. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear from you, as I always do, or as we always do. So after watching this episode, tell me, which Stoic philosopher's teaching resonated most with you? Was it A, Marcus Aurelius, you can't do much worse? Was it Seneca, a wise old owl indeed? Or was it Epictetus, too smart? Just leave an A for Marcus, B for Seneca, C for Epictetus in the comments, and we'll find out which philosopher's ancient wisdom is taking the lead, and maybe we'll do more of theirs later. So thanks ever so much for tuning in to another episode today. As always, I do hope this episode offered you something of value, even if it was just one tool, one tip that improves your leadership ability. by only 1%. 1% every day. There's enormous power in consistency. Remember, marginal gains over time. That's what it's all about. Don't forget to like, follow and subscribe for more episodes just like this one, maybe a little less hectic. And in the next episode, I'll be walking you through one of the models that our clients tell us has made the hugest impact in their leadership. And it's called the 5 levels of feedback. If feedback is something you find tricky, I recommend setting a reminder for, I think it's March the 13th in your calendar. Put it in now or you'll miss the episode. Remember, start time blocking, guys, or subscribe. That always works. Do that too. I'm Antonio Garrido with My Daily Leadership. Thanks for being here. Until next time, by wisdom and effort. Love you lots like jelly tots. See you next time.